Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 775 for the 8th of April. So this is somewhat of a delayed posting or delayed telecast, so it's going to feel a bit different. We're going to be a bit more relaxed and slow down and really look at the front line. And the frontline changes report has already been out. I believe many of you guys have already watched it. So we're going to go into the strategic and tactical reporting, and first thing first, of course, we will always go, not always, but we go by the anti-clockwise direction into the southern front at the Kherson Front. So there is still fighting being reported in the southern bank of the Dnipro River. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry did not really mention where the fighting is. So as usual, we will mark it at Kharkiv. There is a geolocation of a self-propelled gun getting destroyed near the village of Avdiivka. So that's about it in the Kherson Front. At the and then just near Nikopol, south of Kryvyi, there is a S-300 getting destroyed by cluster munition of salt. Some a very big explosion, probably by a missile strike, some kind, probably Iskander or something. And this explosion is massive. You can see the huge class fragmentation in a perfect, round fragmentation effect, which means that the explosion is a bit higher, and then the equipment is destroyed. So it's interesting because we haven't seen S-300 for a long time. So it's a surprise to me also that the Ukrainians still have the S-300 operating. But moving position around here, so near to the front line, we are talking about only 40 kilometers is a little bit too near. But then the Ukrainians do not have really much choices, because now that the Russians are using glide bombs, the fab bombs, as they can release the bomb much further away. I think the S-300s have no choice but to deploy much nearer to the front line, and that also becomes an easier target for the Russians to take out. At the Zaporizhzhia Front, this is Zaporizhzhia city. At the Zaporizhzhia Front, there is reports of fighting reported towards Stepove, as well as in the northwest of Verbove and at Robotine. You probably can't see, too much this entrenchment around here. There is reports of bombardment at Perlivka, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. So these are the various places with some actions, but according to the Russian Defense Ministry, it seems like these are just positional war. That means static. They're just firing at the Ukrainians. They're not really doing assault. They're not capturing ground. It looks like they have no intention of retake or take the Orikhiv sector, or actually retake the entire of this salient that the Ukrainians have taken during the counteroffensive. So So I think this actually works in Russians' favor, despite the Russians are actually still pushing slowly in the northwest of Verbove. But this creates a massive logistical problem for the Ukrainians, because if the Ukrainians want to hold the ground, they'll have to keep sending reinforcement to the front line and putting themselves at risk from the Russians that can fire from all directions. So this is the main problem for the Ukrainians. And the Ukrainians, they sacrifice so much to capture this ground. This area here, they sacrifice so much to capture all these things. Entire brigades has been lost for this little bit of land. I think it's going to be really a hard division for any commander to say just retreat to a more strategically easier place to defend. So this is one thing that constantly plague the Ukrainian forces, because they have been too obsessed with holding ground or not measuring the frontline changes or where how much they have retaken or how much they have captured or lost. Of course, that's the whole purpose of the frontline changes report. But when you come to the strategic situation, this creates a unenviable situation for the soldiers on the ground, because they are constantly sent to a line where it's so far away from the support bases. It's just difficult. And then along the way, they can be, victim to FPV drone strikes, Lancet drone strikes, and then of course other kind of fire from ATGM to airstrike to it is just difficult. I mean, if you look at the Russian situation, they did this massive withdrawal from the Northern Front when they know that they don't have the troop numbers to hold the front line during those days. This front line around in the Northern Front, they don't have what it takes to hold it, so they gave it up. Of course, they used the guise of being goodwill during the Istanbul agreement, the peace deal. But they also, I'm sure the Russians know the deal will not go through. It's obvious. Ukraine was prepared for war, so and then the rhetoric have not changed during those days. So the Russians already know that deal is not going to go through. Any people who have experience in diplomacy or have been observing diplomacy at work, geopolitics at work, knows that is not the case. It will not happen. The same thing happened in terms of the withdrawal, where the Russians withdraw from the Kherson Front. They have basically something like this, and they withdrew everything down to the southern part of the Dnipro River. The Russians are willing to do all this kind of thing, despite the PR hit, the boost the enemy's morale, and then of course the hit on their own morale. It actually smashed their own morale, because a lot of Russian soldiers died for all these places as well. To defend or to capture all these places, a lot of people have died as well. So the fact that they are willing to retreat shows the degree of flexibility, the willingness to withdraw. The same thing happened during the Kharkiv offensive, the Kharkiv counter-offensive. According to the Ukrainians, I call it the Bakhmut offensive. At that time, the Russians are holding this line into Izium and something like this. So this entire area, the Russians basically withdrew from this entire massive amount of areas. Yes, it came as a Ukrainian thought. After they break through Bakhmut, they spread out in these directions to Chuhuiv and everything. So that I think the line was like this. Sorry. So the Ukrainians did break through, but the Russians did not throw guys at the enemy to hold the line. They basically did a mass withdrawal, very fast withdrawal. Troops that were sent in was just to do protection, to protect the retreat, and then everything just withdraw. And of course, the reality of those times was also that the Russians did not have troops on the ground. They do not have enough troops. The mobilization has not happened. The contract troops have all been withdrawn. In fact, when the Bakhmut offensive or the Ukrainian counteroffensive at Kharkiv happened, there wasn't much of Russian troops actually on the ground. Not much. All the front line was actually held by the Donbas militias, the volunteer forces. So and of course Wagner and some of these are Chechens, I believe. So but the Chechens are not much during those days as well. They have already rotated out. So the Russians basically just withdraw. They know they can't hold ground, and rather than having troops dying overly unnecessarily, they withdraw. And then you came the mobilization, where the Russian forces quickly reinforced even without training. So this is where you heard the news, the information from the pro-Ukrainian space talking about the Russians sending the mobilized troops without training, despite they say that they will have 2 weeks of training or refresher. They did not. They immediately sent to the front. Was because of this, because there was no troops on the ground. They need to quickly send in to help hold the ground, and while the Russian forces were actually massive withdrawing and the Ukrainians were giving chase. In fact, the Russians withdraw so fast, the Ukrainians can't even catch them, because the Ukrainians have to beware, mindful of traps, IEDs, mines, so they cannot move as fast as the Russians. And then the volunteer forces started to hold the ground at Liman. Sorry, wrong color. At Liman, they try to hold the ground around Oskil region, Krimki, and this is where they try to hold the ground to wait to wait for reinforcement to quickly come so that they do not lose even more ground. And that's when the Ukrainians start to slowly break them down and break through the center and towards Kharkiv. And then by then, when this breakthrough came on, Russian forces have already arrived at Zaporizhzhia region, and they have sent reinforcement to Liman to help the withdrawal from Liman. That's where the BAR 13, the famous BAR 13 volunteer force, was holding the ground at Liman and at Novoselivka, Drobyshev region, and then they actually withdraw out. So this is the kind of a strategic and flexibility or tactical flexibility that's required to save men and to allow you to continue to fight. And a lot of people, of course, survived through this kind of situation. And however, Ukrainians have a totally different conundrum because they can't lose ground, because it will look bad to the international partners where they are required to get arms and ammunition from. So the Ukrainians trying to hold these grounds just get them stuck in this terrible situation where they have to go down this highway where they are constantly struck by FPV drone. This is already established by so many videos. And then they have to go through difficult places to reinforce the front line. Yeah, and then the Russians just keep airstrike and FPV drone strike them. So this kind of situation is really bad. But of course, even if you put me in the Ukrainian side, I'm going to have the same problem, because I don't think politically Zelensky or any of the leaderships will allow the Ukrainian military to withdraw, because the same rumors came out during the Battle of Bakhmut as well, where the Zaluzhny allegedly wanted to withdraw and Zelensky blocked it. So, and then threw Zaluzhny under the bus and said that Zaluzhny recommended that the Ukrainian forces fight at Bakhmut, which of course eventually they lost a lot of men, damaging their ability to do counteroffensive in the Bakhmut region, and then to even hold good defense line, they lost so much good troops there. So, and Russia just lost the Wagner, which is more expendable from the eyes of the Russian leadership. So at the Velika Novosilka sector of the Donetsk Front, Russian forces continue their positional war over at Staromayorsky and Uruzhaine, where they just continue to hammer from afar against Ukrainian troops. There is a geolocation of RBK 500. I believe this is a guided bomb airstrike on a Ukrainian position just southwest of Shatarsky. Simply just show that Ukrainian forces are there. It's not very important. Nothing in the Voleda region. Over at this Marinka sector, Russian forces attacked Krasnohorivka, Georgievka, as well as Novomihailivka. And there's nothing special about the Georgievka and the Novomihailivka. The main thing is coming from Krasnohorivka. There is a super long 3-minute speed up footage of Russian forces storming into the southeastern part of Krasnohorivka. It's a very, very long footage. You can catch it at DPA Archive. You can search on YouTube, DPA Archive, and it's a super incredible video where the Russians basically attack in around 9 to 12 vehicles, and then as they penetrate through the clearing, they started to open up. And one of these force that was the drone was following actually landed troops into these buildings around here, whereas there is other forces, they just open up, and this makes it impossible or very difficult for the Ukrainian drones to follow, for the artillery people to shell correctly, accurately against forces coming from different directions. So there is possibility that the Russian land troops around here as one of this force that was split out from the initial punch. So, and then this one over here is confirmed. So we will continue to monitor. This is the round 2 of the Battle of Krasnohorivka. Round 1 was won by Ukraine as the Russian forces salient, or rather the foothold in the southern part of Krasnohorivka has been captured, and the Russian forces got kicked out entirely from Krasnohorivka. So that was round 1. So this is round 2, and this looks a bit more serious. And the Russian forces came out from from this region here. They drove around this quarry and then go down this railway line and quickly spin out and actually land troops. It was pretty fast. It seems like a sudden attack. The Ukrainians did spot them, so which is why there was a drone, covering all this entire movement, and then Ukrainian was launching artillery at the Russian tanks. It was pretty accurate, the artillery shelling. That means they are following the location, the movement of the tanks, but it seems like not enough of artillery shell. The amount of shelling is very low. It looks like there is only 1 to 2 guns that was firing at the tanks. Only 1 to 2 guns. So if it's only 1 to 2 artillery guns, is a bit low in terms of the amount of artillery you need to stop a armored assault. So we move into the Avdiivka Front. At the Avdiivka Front, Russian forces retook the initiative again. I mean, they already have the initiative, but the Ukrainians was doing a massive counteroffensive to stop the Russian push. But the counteroffensive has been limited right now. The Ukrainians is counterattacking at Novokalinove and Badaichi. However, the Russian forces are storming into Novokalinove. They have allegedly captured most of Badaichi. There's attack at Semenivka, towards the west of Olivka, towards Umansky, towards the west of Tonenke, north of Vodian, towards Netelove, as well as out of Nevelsky. So if you look at this strategic mapping, you can see that the situation is rather precarious, with the main push coming out from this area here towards Umansky and towards Netelove. And this is the main push. So in terms of the most significant, of course, based on the frontline changes, there is this salient, or this bulge that is developing north of Vodian. I don't think this is going to be sustainable. Ukrainian forces is likely to withdraw, with Russian forces already pushing westward from Tonenke, and they are slowly closing this gap, as well as with the capture of Vodian. Russian forces are pushing north from Vodian, and this push, if the Russians take this, then we will we will see an encirclement. So this is unlikely for the Ukrainian soldiers to want to hold at this position. They will try to escape. Then, of course, the fighting is now reaching Netelove, and of course, as I mentioned, the Russian forces can actually cut off the Ukrainian forces that is fighting at Pervomaiske. So Pervomaiske will not be so easily holdable. Of course, there is a lot of ground south of this area, the remaining northern part of Pervomaiske for the Ukrainians. So it's not encircled yet, but definitely, cutting off through the main, cutting off road access is would be very, 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 very inconvenient. The Badaichi region is very weird because after we invalidated the Russian claims, the Russians have a new claim that looks like this. I mean, this is not what you think this is. This is actually a Stegosaurus. No, this is a Stegosaurus. Yeah. So anyway, the Ukrainian forces got geolocated to be airstrike at this location. Russian claims is until the lake region around here, and is not really most of this settlement, actually more south of it. So they are attacking in this direction. So, but this is just a claim. This is based on Russian mapping. This cannot be trusted as it is. So we will continue to wait for further information. In terms of Ukrainian mapping, the front line is here. So that we shall wait and see how this goes. Russian forces are still pushing into the center of Semenivka. So I think the battle here is going to end pretty soon, maybe a week, I guess, if the Ukrainians are doing well. And the Novokalinove was a surprise as well. So in yesterday's SITREP, we saw the Russian forces attack in this area here. They were geolocated here, and the Ukrainian forces counterattack and probably recaptured most of this place. Most of these are furthest point that Russians have arrived. However, as the Ukrainians go south, the Russians hit from the other side. Like boxing, is a left fin, right hook kind of situation. And the Ukrainian forces, there's a Ukrainian position around here, and they will bypass. They're getting bypassed by the Russians from around it. And there is possible Russian positions already south of this Ukrainian defensive position. So this is going to be quite disastrous. And it looks like some kind of a tactical play from the Russian side. So I find this super fascinating, and this is not the only front line that this happened. The same thing happened, of course, at Krasnohorivka. Just when the Ukrainian forces cleared the southern part where the Russians have the salients at Krasnohorivka, the Russians did this massive push into the southeastern part of Krasnohorivka. So it feels like the same thing. It looks like the Russians are becoming more and more tactically adept. So we will continue to watch the war and see if this is actually the case, or this is just coincidence, because it's not easy to coordinate this kind of tactical maneuver where you try to feint or some people say this is like the Russian strategy of mascara. I forgot the term, mastirovka or something, putting on mascara. So as the Russians put on the mascara, the Ukrainians got duped, and then they fall for the trans Russians. So anyway, this is we will continue to monitor and see if this is the case, because definitely with the reports coming in and out on a daily basis, we will probably able to see if there is some kind of tactics in being involved, because for so far Russians don't have really a lot of tactics per se. Their tactic is more like they attack. Once they capture the ground, they redraw, and then but they booby trap the places that they capture. So when the Ukrainians return to retake all those trenches, they got hit by IEDs, hit by booby traps. This is something that is confirmed to me from the Ukrainian side. Fighters on the ground basically say that. So of course, the Ukrainians probably do the same thing, but the Ukrainians are more desperate about grounds, about holding the ground, which I mentioned before. So they are more susceptible to such a booby trapping. So anyway, at Niu-York Front, Ukrainian forces attack out from New York again, but this, of course, very small scale, so nothing really to shout about. In the southern flank of the Bakhmut Front, we have the usual thing, Russian forces attacking at Klishchiivka as well as Avdiivka. So that's about it. Nothing much to talk about here. In the northern flank, that's where all the actions is. You can see a huge amount of ground change with Russian forces allegedly captured Berdyanivka. This is claimed by a Russian source. This is not announced by the Russian Defense Ministry yet. So allegedly Berdyanivka has been captured. However, based on Ukrainian mapping, if you have watched the Frontline Changes report, it seems like there is it seems to be pretty much the case. Even with Ukrainian mapping, it looks damning, and Russian forces are pushing north of Ivaniske through the forest. So this is like a two-pronged attack towards Chasivia. So this is some kind of two-pronged attack, a pincer of salt, while the Russians are holding this front line over at Novi, where the Ukrainian forces is now sending forces and probably reinforcement to ensure that the Russians do not break through. Then suddenly you have this pincer developing from the north and the south. Of course, again, I do not know if this is static or this is just coincidence. This is just a full frontal assault that end up some parts got further ahead, some parts got slower. And but whatever it is, even this area here that it was claimed by the Russian side seems to have some kind of acknowledgement by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry as they report fighting near Stuposhki. So Stuposhki is this town here. This is Stuposhki, and I suspect that Stuposhki actually stretched quite a bit. Maybe until here, maybe until here. Yeah. Okay, I don't know what monster is this. So anyway, the Russian forces, if they are as per the Russian claims, reaching near the canal, then fighting near Stuposhki does make some sense. So, but the Ukrainian Defense Ministry basically says that. So yeah, because they said they repelled attack. So this is an attack that can be repelled. It's not a fire attack, so it's not shelling. So the Ukrainian Defense Ministry somewhat is acknowledging passively that the Russians have advanced from Ivaniske. And important to note is that Ukrainian Defense Ministry did not mention Ivaniske in their report about fighting. They said Stuposhki, but no Ivaniske. So which means that the Ukrainians have acknowledged that Ivanytsky have been captured by the Russian forces, and there is also geolocation of a Lancet hitting Ukrainian tank south of Zaporizhzhia. So the situation is looking rather bad. If we zoom in a bit, the Russian forces, according to the Ukrainians, this is the Ukrainian claim this. The Ukrainian claim that the Russians have advanced in this area here, and the gray zone, of course, stretch on much further. So, which means that the entire forest is now in doubt for the Ukrainians, and which means that it corroborates the possibility, the rumor of the withdrawal west of Ivanytsky reported by Ryba. So the pro-Russian source reported this rumor that the Ukrainian forces have withdrawn from the western part of Ivanytsky to the west bank of the canal. So with this map change, it looks like this is semi-corroborated, somewhat corroborated. And over at this Bodanivka region, Ukrainian mapping actually shows that the Russians have taken like this. There is this punch suddenly in the western part of Bodanivka. This is unable to be refuted because there is video geolocated the Russian forces on this location. But the Ukrainians did not want to acknowledge that the Russians have taken this center area here of Bodanivka. However, according to Russian mapping, they are super far. The Russians have taken this forest line. They have taken these buildings around here, taken some part of the southern part of this forest. And also declared the capture of Bodanivka. So this is a huge changes, and the fighting is now at Kreminna. So the battle of Kreminna have begun, if the Russian claims are correct. So we will wait and see, we'll monitor and see if this is the case. And we move on. At the Siversk Front, Russian forces are attacking Bilohorivka, Verkhovno-Kayamsky, as well as Perny. So that's about it. This is a strategic situation. In terms of Bilohorivka, the fighting is coming from around the chalk quarry, which is here. The chalk quarry area is very, very, very heavily defended. It's basically a small, it's some kind of a hill. It's very difficult and very, very heavily defended. The Russians have bombarded this area many times. It doesn't seem to destroy the Ukrainian forces over there. Over the Kreminna Front, Russian forces are attacking at Terny as usual. Nothing special about this. Moving on, nothing at Sviatove. Over at the Kupyansk Front, Russian forces attacks in Kivka. The Zaporizhzhia fighting is not being reported anymore. So that's probably just probing attack. And that's it from the Kupyansk Front. There is only one attack reported at the border regions. Basically, there is this strike by the Russian forces on a Ukrainian train. So this train carries fuel. There is a train with a lot of fuel. What's it called? Cars. The cars that carries the fuel, and so it looks like this caterpillar over here. You can check this out on the DPA archive. And then, so this is a fuel facility over in this southeastern part of Kharkiv. You can see there's some fuel storage around here, and the destruction of the train is here, around here, or here. So this strike basically hit. There's a direct hit onto the train, and then the train exploded, and then there's fire and whatnot. So I'm not sure what's the equipment used for this strike. It could be an air strike. The train is stationary, so it is not a difficult hit if you have accurate weapons. So anyway, this is the summary for the day of 775 for the 8th of April. Of course, the fighting on the 9th of April is ongoing. In fact, they might have already starting to go into the 10th of April. I'm not sure what's the Ukraine time right now. Let me check. Ukraine time is 10 p.m. So it's still in the 9th of April in Ukraine. So this of course situation is developing. I did not report anything on the 9th of April. So this is everything 8th of April. So basically go through, because what happened is that I posted the frontline changes report. The YouTube is pushing it, so it was good. The viewership is decent, is good. I mean, comparing to the views that I'm getting is actually very good. So I did not want to throw in a SITREP and disrupt this trending of the video. So I have to let it run, which is why the SITREP we do a delayed one. But I think a delayed one also give me less stress because I don't have to rush for time, because of course usually I want to rush quickly send out the report so that it will be timely. But since that we already have the frontline changes report out, so I can actually post this SITREP slower, where we actually go into details about what has happened over the past 24 hours, or rather the last day, and the latest. Because I don't really go into doing breaking news, because breaking news tend to be a lot of false information, so I don't want to go into breaking news. But we go into details talking about all the various issues and the various front line and the tactics and whatnot. So I think let me know in the comments if this is a good format, and yeah, I will see how this goes. I will adapt accordingly. Anyway, thank you for watching. Do press the like button, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next update.